Hey everybody, welcome in to another episode of Is It Worth It? With a twist. With so many movie theaters opening back up and with films being released on demand amid this COVID pandemic, I figured that access to movies is going to be more in demand than it's probably been in years. So why not expand the Is It Worth It horizons to other forms of storytelling? I'm a big movie buff. Growing up, my dream job was to be a Hollywood director. When I was in college, I took a bunch of film classes just for fun. I really love talking about movies. Today, we're gonna kick off the Is It Worth It Movie Madness spinoff series with the latest big release in the world of cinema, and that's with Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon. Heads up, we got some minor spoilers ahead here. Nothing you won't have seen in the trailers, but if you're a strictly no previews guy or gal, skip this review and go back to one of the book reviews from earlier on in the series. Raya and the Last Dragon tells the story of the latest Disney princess, Raya, as she tries to unite the five kingdoms by finding the last dragon. Pretty obvious based on the title. It's a movie certainly made for kids, especially with some of those classic Disney side characters and the humor and all that good stuff, but the themes are extremely relevant and powerful in today's society. It's a family-friendly movie from the creators of movies like Moana and Frozen, which I will reference throughout this review. But with that said, it's not quite as magical as those adventures. My problem with Raya was that everything happened too quickly. It tries to do too much in too little time. It's just a try-hard when you compare it to these other films, and when you talk about the comic relief, when you talk about the storytelling, it's just trying to do too much. Take the humor, for instance. Some of those lovable Disney sidekicks that are a classic staple in this, what I would call genre, just aren't that interesting in Raya the Last Dragon. When we talk about movies like Moana and Frozen, these guys just can't hold up to characters like Hey Hey and Olaf. They're just not that funny. The scenes that focus solely on them are kind of dull in comparison. And I hated that. I hated not being able to enjoy those characters effortlessly. I had to try to get into the movie at times because the writing was ineffective. Even the ninja baby and her monkeys, which have some really cool sequences, especially their introduction, could have been better. And I'm sorry, during a COVID pandemic where all these movies have been pushed back, there's no excuse to not have refined your scripts to the point where they are astounding. It's why heading into the rest of 2021, I'm going to be super critical of these movies because they've had time to figure out what worked, what didn't, to sit back on a movie. I mean, so many times productions are rushed because they have to meet firm deadlines, but this is the one time in our country's history where that's not been a problem. I mean, when I talk about the script failing in some areas regarding dialogue, even the dragon annoyed me. It might have been the voice actor a little bit. It might have just been the sheer ignorance of the dragon, which is understandable in the context of the movie, but still is harped on way too frequently. I don't know, I think the character would have worked better silent. It would have allowed for Raya to work out some of the thematic messaging on her own rather than it being spoon-fed to her over and over again until she finally realizes what's going on. I mean, this certainly would have required an extra dose of creativity, but again, they've had time to do that. And a lot of these issues that I'm talking about could have been solved if they didn't mess with the Disney formula, the Disney princess formula, and left it as a musical. I get why they wanted to break free of that mold for this movie. The themes, the storytelling, the plot devices, they're more serious than they are in a Frozen or something like that. But man, there's just so many sequences that feel rushed, and if they would have explained via song, it would have been okay to rush. That's a Disney thing. That's what Disney does. They move from point A to point B via song and dance so that they don't have to focus too much on the storytelling and the world building there because the song does it for them. I can think of 3 or 4 specific instances where a catchy number would have eradicated my worries regarding pacing and dialogue and storytelling, and it would have been fine. It would have been great, actually. In fact, this might have ended up being my favorite Disney movie if they would have done that. For those who haven't seen the movie, let me put this into context. Imagine the Trolls scene in Frozen without a song. Or imagine the I've Got a Dream sequence in Tangled without music. Doesn't work as well, does it? It would have felt so quick, so forced, and therefore unnecessary. The song and dance add a memorable kind of kick to it that make people forget about that kind of stuff. None of that's present here. There are no songs in Raya the Last Dragon, and the pacing suffers because of it. It's pretty messy in this story. Granted, the first 20 minutes are paced perfectly. I thought that the movie was going to be astounding after nearly a half hour, but things take a downward turn from there. Everything feels rushed. Maybe the writers were working with too many kingdoms. 5 is a lot to handle in an hour and 45 minutes. I think that if they would have subtracted one of those kingdoms and just focused on 4, it would have been much more effective. It would have given some of these other side characters who sometimes are introduced for a total of 2 minutes, that have really interesting aspects about them that are completely glossed over. It would have given the writers some time to focus on them. I think pacing had a lot to do with why the ending was kind of confusing for me. After looking back on it, it makes more sense than it did in the moment, but I was kind of confused with some of the stuff that happened in the last 10 minutes of the movie, and I really had to think about why it happened and kind of puzzle it together myself because the elements are glossed over. It's a theme with Raya. Now, I'm sure all of this sounds like I hated this movie, but I've tried to make it a point that no, I liked Raya, I just could have liked it so much more. It was a solid Disney animated flick. It had potential to be the best one in 10 years. The themes are the realest, most powerful I can remember in a Disney movie. At least this millennium. The writers do an excellent job of incorporating storytelling elements for younger and older audiences that make this a very watchable film for all ages, and they do it in a way that is creative, is interesting, and is completely action-packed. Again, maybe too action-packed at times, but action-packed nonetheless. The story moves. Moreover, this baby's emotional. I'm not a hugely emotional guy, but I found myself getting a little teary at the very end of this film. Maybe it's the messaging, maybe it's the story, maybe I was sad that it wasn't all I thought it was cracked up to be, but regardless, I found myself on the verge of tears as this movie came to its conclusion. So there's something to be said for that. Also, I want to take a quick moment to recognize Kelly Marie Tran as an awesome Disney princess. She kills it. Some of the voice actors in this movie aren't great. Part of that is due to the dialogue writing. Some of it's also choices they make as actors, but Kelly Marie Tran as Raya crushes it. A lot of people are going to remember her for her role as Rose Tico in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, but her true Disney staple should be as Raya. And if they ever expand Raya into a miniseries or a sequel, I'd be very interested to see Kelly Marie Tran come back as Raya because she's great in the role. Also, Raya and the Last Dragon is gorgeous. It's the prettiest Disney movie ever made. It's incredible when you consider how far computer animated graphics have come since like Toy Story 25 years ago. It's wild. It makes me just so giddy about the idea of where we're gonna be in 10 years, 15 years, because there's moments in this movie that kind of look real, or at least real from an animated perspective. It's difficult to explain that because Disney's very clearly not going for a realistic look, but there's sequences that I don't think could have possibly looked better even if they tried. There's memorable backdrops, there's an awesome atmosphere here, there's really cool settings in play, the world building is great. The fight sequences in particular are particularly eye-catching. They are Very well done. The choreography is stellar. Job well done when we talk about the animation process here for the creative team at Disney. Earlier I mentioned how after the first 20 to 30 minutes things got messy, but I really want to focus on those first 20 minutes because the introduction to this world is flawless. Perfectly well paced. The information we need as viewers is presented in very digestible ways. There's an outstanding blend of serious elements with perfectly timed comedic relief. I actually think the opening for Raya works much better than for any Disney movie to date, and that's saying something. And it's a shame that that's the best part of the movie. So, is Raya and the Last Dragon worth it? Raya is an awesome family film with great action and thematic elements. There's some great deviations from standard Disney plotting structures that make this a entertaining watch. It'll keep you on your toes. The imagery is gorgeous. All that said, it's not as good as I thought it was going to be. Part of this is because there's just too much going on for an hour and 45-minute movie. Part of this is because they thought this wouldn't work well as a musical. Most of it is just because it tries too hard. It's like the creators forgot what makes a Disney princess film work. I'd certainly say it's worth it for Disney fans, but temper your expectations when you go in so you don't come out disappointed. On the worthy meter, I thought this movie had potential to hit a 90, got a 72. So you can see it's worth it, but it's not one of the greats. Thanks so much for joining me in on the first episode of Is It Worth It Movie Madness. I don't know what to do about this backdrop here. These are the books, but everything's on digital nowadays, so we'll figure something out. For now, we're going with the book backdrop, so it's fine. As previously promised, I will have my review for the latest sci-fi thriller novel release, The Echo Wife, ready for y'all later this week. These Movie Madness reviews, when I get a chance to see a new film, I'll get something up here for you guys. I think that it's a great way to let you guys know whether or not a 1 to 4 hour movie is worth your time. So, as for Raya, check it out. But again, temper expectations and you won't be as disappointed as I was. Have a great day, stay healthy, keep watching movies and reading books, guys. It's a great way to get through this pandemic together. Thanks.